The day I outshot every man in the room wasn't a victory. It was a statement. Have you ever been overlooked, underestimated, or even dismissed for something so trivial that it's hard to believe it happened at all? That day, they didn't know what they were dealing with, and I knew they didn't see me coming. But when I pulled that trigger, there wasn't a single man in that room who could claim their victory again. The shooting range was filled with noise, the familiar crack of rifles, the steady cadence of training. The air smelled of gunpowder, sweat, and the sharpened edge of competition. I was just one of the faces among a sea of men, all of them military professionals, hardened by experience. I wasn't anything special in their eyes, just a woman who'd somehow found her way into a sniper training session that, to them, should have been reserved for men with calloused hands and battle-tested nerves. I wasn't supposed to be there, and that fact hung in the air heavier than any bullet I could fire. My name is Miranda, and I didn't belong. At least, that's what they thought. I had joined the military years ago, not because I wanted to prove anything to anyone, but because I felt the call to serve, to be part of something greater than myself. Over the years, I'd earned my place, climbing the ranks with quiet precision. But no matter how many medals I'd earned or how many missions I'd completed, there were always eyes that dismissed me the moment I walked into a room. My gender was a whisper that followed me, just beneath the surface of every interaction, always making sure I knew I wasn't what they expected. The day I walked into that sniper training session was no different. The men around me didn't even try to hide their disbelief. The whispers didn't even need to be verbal. Just the stares alone told me everything I needed to know. They were thinking the same thing. What is she doing here? And most of them were probably wondering when I'd fail. Maybe they thought they could predict it. Maybe they thought I was just a distraction, a woman who was about to make a fool of herself. They were wrong, but I wasn't in a hurry to prove them wrong. Not yet. The instructor, a seasoned sniper named Sterling, stood at the front of the room, barking orders with the confidence of a man who'd lived through every kind of firefight imaginable. He had no time for soft hearts or easy answers. In his world, every shot was a test of your mettle, your precision, your ability to see the world through a lens of survival. And at that moment, he looked at me, his eyes scanning over my face, as if trying to figure out what kind of mistake he'd just made by letting me attend. "Miranda," he said, his voice a harsh command. "You'll be last. Watch and learn." The word stung, but I didn't show it. Instead, I tightened my grip on the rifle, focusing on the targets downrange. The others went first, their shots ringing out with practiced ease. Each of them, one by one, showcased their skill, the sound of their shots echoing through the range. I didn't care about their performance. I didn't care about their pride. I cared about one thing, my shot. And the moment I took it, everything would change. The air was thick with tension, thick with the expectations of the men around me. They didn't want me there, and I could feel their eyes on me as I stood, waiting for my turn. Their impatience was palpable. They wanted me to fail. They wanted me to be just another statistic, another person who couldn't hack it. I couldn't blame them, honestly. I was breaking the unspoken rule of what they thought military snipers should look like. "Miranda, it's your turn," Sterling called out, a hint of disbelief in his voice, like he was surprised I'd made it this far. I stepped up to the shooting position, setting my rifle on the rest. I focused my breathing, keeping my movements slow and deliberate. They all stood behind me, watching, waiting for me to fail. I could feel their eyes boring into my back, their skepticism hanging in the air like a thick fog. But I wasn't here to appease them. I was here to perform. I looked down the scope, the crosshairs steady on the target. The wind was light, but the angle was tricky. I'd been taught to read every minute variable, to know when to adjust, when to trust my instincts. This wasn't just about hitting a target. It was about showing them, showing all of them, that I was more than what they thought I was. I pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. For a split second, there was silence. Then, a soft thud echoed from the target downrange. I'd hit it, dead center. No one expected it. No one knew what to say. The room was still. Then, as if on cue, Sterling walked up to me, his face unreadable. "Again," he ordered, handing me another magazine. I didn't flinch. I didn't hesitate. I was already on my second shot, lining up the target again. But this time, I wasn't just hitting the target. I was hitting every expectation, every doubt, every ounce of skepticism that had been thrown at me. The next shot hit, dead center again, and the next, and the next. By the time I finished, the men were quiet. Sterling's face had shifted from disbelief to something I hadn't expected. Respect. The other snipers who had been so eager to watch me fail now stood, silent, absorbing what had just happened. Sterling didn't say a word at first. He just stood there looking at me. Then finally he spoke, his tone less harsh but no less commanding. "You've earned your place here," he said, his voice carrying weight. "But don't get cocky. This is just the beginning." I didn't need his approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. But I knew what that moment had meant, not just for me, but for everyone watching. It wasn't about a single shot. It wasn't about proving that I could outshoot any man in the room. It was about showing that the way they saw me wasn't the way it had to be. It was about showing them all that I belonged, just as much as anyone else. Have you ever been underestimated in a way that made you question everything, only to turn it into your moment to shine? I'd been underestimated my whole life. But that day, with every shot I landed, I proved something bigger than just a target hit. I proved that I could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best, and that I was more than capable of being the one who set the standard. The men didn't see it coming. And in that moment, neither did I. But what I knew for sure was this. I wasn't just a woman in a sniper training session. I was the one who had the skill, the patience, and the strategy to outshoot anyone who thought they were better. I was the one who would set the bar, and they would all have to follow. The silence in the room was deafening. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had stopped, holding its breath. I could feel their eyes on me, those men who had been so quick to dismiss me, so eager to prove I didn't belong. But there was nothing for them to say. Not anymore. They had seen me shoot. They had seen what I could do. I had turned their expectations on their heads with a single pull of the trigger. Sterling didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at me like he was trying to figure out the woman standing in front of him. He had thought I was a mistake. I could see it in his eyes. But now something was different. There was no longer a question in his gaze. It had transformed into something else. Recognition. A realization that maybe, just maybe, he had misjudged me from the start. "Let's move on," he said finally, his voice gruff but with a hint of respect. "That's enough for today." The rest of the men didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Their silence spoke volumes. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to hear any of them tell me I'd done well. I had already proven myself, and that was the most satisfying part. But what I didn't realize then was that this moment would become the spark for something much bigger, something that would change everything. Over the next few days, the aftermath of my unexpected performance hung in the air, like the smoke from a spent gun. The men had been forced to confront their biases, and while their grudging respect was there, it didn't erase the doubts that still lingered in their minds. Some of them, I could tell, still thought I was a fluke. Others, the more perceptive ones, had seen what I could do, but none of them truly knew how deep this would go. I wasn't content with just being a woman who could shoot a rifle. I wasn't here to prove that I could be as good as a man. I was here to prove that I could be better. And the truth was, I wasn't just showing them my skill as a sniper. I was about to show them something more. The deep, quiet strategy that had kept me alive in situations where others had failed. It wasn't just about the shot. It was about the moments leading up to it, the planning, the way my mind worked, in sync with my body, the patience, the understanding of timing. That was what made me dangerous. It wasn't long before I was called in for the next session. This time, it wasn't a simple drill. This was the real thing. The kind of mission that snipers like us trained for, the kind that tested every ounce of our training, our focus, and our resolve. Sterling had no illusions about what he had seen. He had already figured out that I was something different. He just didn't understand how different I was. He had always measured success by a simple standard, the ability to hit the target. But as he and the other snipers soon found out, the game I was playing was much more complicated than that. The mission was set up as a simulation, one of those test runs they use to measure the proficiency of soldiers under fire. I didn't know the details of the operation, just that we would be given a set of coordinates and a target, and we would be expected to hit it under pressure. Simple, right? At least that's what they thought. The target area was on the far side of the range, a long stretch of open terrain marked by scattered obstacles, a mix of trees, rocks, and debris. A perfect place for a sniper to hone their skills. But the thing about this mission was that it wasn't just about accuracy. It was about being able to adapt to changing conditions, to respond to unexpected factors, and to do it all with precision under pressure. Most snipers could hit a target under ideal conditions, but few could hit it when everything around them was in chaos. We were told that this would be a time trial. The clock would start the moment we were given our coordinates, and we would have to complete the shot within a given time frame. If we missed the window, we failed. There were no second chances. The pressure was palpable. The men around me were ready. They had their rifles in hand, their eyes fixed on the target, waiting for the signal to go. But I wasn't worried. I wasn't nervous. This wasn't a race to be the fastest. This was a race to be the most precise. As I prepared to move into position, I could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just the men that were watching me now. It was something deeper. Sterling had been watching me closely since the last session, and he was expecting a repeat performance. The men around me, those who had previously dismissed me, were now eyeing me like I was some kind of unpredictable variable. One that could either fail spectacularly or perform even better than before. The wind was light, but the terrain was rocky, uneven. I could hear my heart beat in my ears as I made my way into the designated spot. My rifle was steady in my hands, the weight familiar, comforting. But I wasn't just looking at the target. I was looking at everything around it. The patterns, in the wind, the angles of the obstacles, the movements of the other snipers who were setting up. This was more than just a shooting drill. This was a psychological game, one where timing and patience were just as important as skill. The clock started ticking. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, focusing not just on the target, but on the rhythm of the moment. I could hear the soft rustling of the leaves in the trees, the sound of the men adjusting their positions behind me. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't thinking about the clock. I was thinking about the shot. I was thinking about when to take it, not just how. The men were firing. One after another, their shots rang out, echoing across the field. They were good, no doubt about it. But the faster they fired, the more rushed they seemed. There was no precision in their movements. Their targets fell, yes, but not with the grace that came from careful calculation, not with the ease that came from true understanding. I was about to make my move. My breathing slowed as I aligned the scope on my target, adjusting for the wind, the distance, the obstacles in my line of sight. I could hear the other snipers firing their rounds, their shots punctuating the air with urgency. But I wasn't focused on them. I was focused on my shot, the one that would separate me from the rest. I took my time. I let the wind settle. I let the world around me quiet down. And then, with steady hands, I pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, and the world went still. There was no mistaking it. The target fell, a perfect hit. No one had expected it, not even Sterling. He turned toward me, his eyes wide, and for the first time since I had joined, I saw something different in him. It wasn't just respect. It was recognition. Recognition. That I wasn't just another sniper. I was something far more dangerous. As the others finished their shots, they began to gather around, whispering, pointing at the target, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and grudging admiration. I didn't need their praise. The hit was all that mattered. Sterling approached me, his voice low. "Miranda," he said, "I think it's time we start talking about your future in this unit. You've earned your place." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. They had all seen it now. They had seen that the woman they had written off as a distraction was the one who had made the impossible shot, and the game had changed forever. The days following that last drill felt like they had stretched into something more than mere time. In the span of a few hours, everything had shifted. The men who had once looked at me with disbelief now approached with a quiet, measured respect. Sterling, though still as hard and unyielding as ever, began to include me in more of the real tactical discussions, his eyes no longer assessing whether I belonged, but how I could contribute. There was no fanfare, no grand acknowledgement of the shift that had just occurred. Only the subtle acknowledgement that I had earned my place. But even as the change took hold, I knew better than to rest on my laurels. There would be no accolades. The world of military snipers is one of stark reality, where performance is the only thing that matters. Sterling's approval wasn't a victory. It was merely the opening of a door to a far more dangerous, far more intricate game. We were scheduled for a live mission, the first real-world test since my remarkable performance at the range. The excitement buzzed in the air as the team prepared for the operation. There was no turning back now. This wasn't training. This was what we had been groomed for, the kind of mission that separates the good from the great. And I wasn't just looking to perform well. I was looking to dominate. The mission was set. We would be deployed in a highly volatile region, tasked with neutralizing a high-value target. A former military officer had turned rogue, and his influence had spread through several key enemy cells. This was not a simple elimination. It was an operation requiring precision, patience, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. We were briefed on the layout of the area, the coordinates of the target, and the factors we would need to account for: the terrain, the weather, the layout of enemy defenses. This was real life. This was as close to a real war zone as any sniper could get. The team assembled in the operations room, the familiar map of the area displayed on the screen in front of us. Sterling stood at the front, outlining the plan, his voice calm but commanding. "You'll be dropped off near the ridge roughly 5 kilometers from the target," Sterling explained. "You'll move in silently, establish your firing positions, and wait for the green light. There's a small window of opportunity, and if we miss it, the mission is a failure. No second chances." I listened closely, already thinking ahead, calculating the variables in my head. I could see everything in my mind already: how the terrain would affect the line of sight, where the wind would shift, how to use the shadows to my advantage. My mind moved like clockwork, a steady rhythm of thought and action. The others seemed focused, but I could feel their tension. This mission wasn't like the others. This wasn't just another routine exercise. This was where the true test of skill would come. I made sure to keep my composure. Every part of me was ready. I was prepared. But there was one thing I had learned in the past weeks. No matter how much you prepare, there are always elements that you cannot control. The real test wasn't how well you could shoot. It was how you could handle the pressure of the unexpected. And the unexpected had a way of making itself known. We boarded the helicopter, the doors sliding shut behind us, the hum of the engines deafening. I sat quietly, my gear secured, eyes fixed on the small window as we rose into the sky. The team was silent, their expressions set in determination. It wasn't fear that held them in place. It was focus. Each of us had been chosen for a reason, and now, more than ever, we were going to prove we deserved to be here. The descent was fast and sharp, the helicopter cutting through the air like a blade. I felt my heartbeat quicken as we neared the landing zone. As the helicopter hovered over the target area, we jumped out, moving swiftly and silently toward the ridge where we would set up. The team scattered, each of us finding our designated positions, preparing for what would come next. The landscape stretched out before us, a vast, open expanse with sparse cover. We were in hostile territory, and every step had to be calculated, every movement deliberate. The target's location was just within reach, but the challenge was how to approach it without alerting the enemy. A missed step, a wrong movement, and we would be exposed. I settled into my position, setting up my rifle and taking a deep breath. I felt the familiar steadiness settle over me, the calm that comes only when everything else falls away. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. I didn't care about the others. I didn't care about the mission's success or failure. I cared only about the shot. The target appeared in my scope, but it wasn't just about the man in front of me. It was about the timing, the variables. The wind was lighter now, but there was a slight shift in the air. I made the necessary adjustment, taking a mental snapshot of everything around me. My team was ready. I was ready. The only thing left was to wait for the signal. We'd been given a narrow window to take the shot, too soon, and we risked being detected. Too late, and the target would be gone. It was a high-stakes game, and the clock was ticking. Sterling's voice came through the earpiece, low and steady. "Green light. Take the shot when ready." I didn't hesitate. I exhaled, the world narrowing to the crosshairs. I didn't think about the men behind me or the pressure of the mission. All I saw was the target. All I felt was the weight of the moment. I squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, clean and swift. There was no moment of uncertainty. The target dropped. It was done. For a moment, I stayed in place, waiting for the next step. The silence felt heavier now, more intense than before. I wasn't worried about the success of the mission. I was already thinking ahead. What would happen next? How would this mission unfold from here? The radio crackled again. Confirmed. Target neutralized. Extraction in 5. I didn't allow myself to feel relief. There was no time for that. I wasn't in this to feel good about myself. I wasn't in this for the accolades. I was in this to be the best, to do what others couldn't, to be the one they couldn't predict. And I had just proven that once again. We exfiltrated the area, the helicopter arriving to pull us out. The team was quiet as we made our way back, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The mission was a success, and I had done my part. The others knew that. Sterling knew that. As we flew back, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. From the woman who had been dismissed as a distraction to the sniper who had just completed a mission that most men in that room couldn't have dreamed of. I had earned my place, not just through my ability to shoot, but through my patience, my precision, and my ability to stay calm under pressure. The others had learned that lesson the hard way, but I wasn't done. I wasn't satisfied. This mission had been a success, yes, but it was just one of many. There were more targets to hit, more obstacles to overcome, more walls to break down. I wasn't interested in the past. I was interested in the future where I would continue to prove, time and time again, that I wasn't just another sniper. I was the one they'd have to reckon with. I didn't need anyone's approval. I never had. The helicopter ride back to base felt different than all the others. There was no celebration, no fist-pumping moment of victory. But there was a sense of closure, a sense that something had shifted irrevocably. The mission was successful. The target had been neutralized. And yet, I felt something more profound than just the usual relief. The reality of being a sniper wasn't about the victories or the kills. It wasn't even about the acknowledgement. It was about the quiet knowledge that your actions, your calm, measured actions, could change the course of an operation, and that your decisions had consequences that no one else could fully understand. The men around me had seen it now. They had witnessed it firsthand. I wasn't just a woman with a rifle. I was a sniper with precision, with control, with the strategic mind that would make the difference between success and failure. The helicopters. Rotor blades cut through the air with a rhythmic thrum. But in that moment, everything felt muted. The men in the back had settled into a familiar silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. They didn't need to speak to acknowledge what had happened. They all knew that the woman they had once written off as a distraction had now become an asset, one whose skills and determination had earned the respect of everyone present. As we landed back at base, I could see the faces of the team members, who had once doubted me, now glancing in my direction. But this time, it wasn't with skepticism. It was with something else. Respect. Respect that had been earned, not through words, but through action. And though they didn't say anything, I knew that I had changed something in them. I had made them realize that competence wasn't about gender. It wasn't about who you were. It was about what you could do. The briefing room was where we debriefed after every mission. We were all gathered around the table, the operations details laid out before us. Sterling stood at the front, a veteran of hundreds of missions. His voice, still commanding, filled the room. "Well done, team," he started. "Mission success. But we all know that success isn't guaranteed every time. There's always a risk." He turned his gaze to me. There was no arrogance in his eyes, no smug superiority. There was only recognition. He nodded slightly, and his next words carried more weight than the others. "Miranda, your shot was flawless. You've proven yourself more than once now. I think it's time we start thinking about your future with this unit." The words struck me harder than I expected. For so long I had been trying to prove that I could keep up, that I could belong. And now, here I was, having earned not just a spot on this team, but the recognition that came with it. There was no applause, no cheering, but there didn't need to be. The respect, the acknowledgement, was woven into Sterling's words. The other men, who had once looked at me with dismissal, now exchanged glances. There were no words, but their eyes said it all. This wasn't just about the shot. This was about the way I had adapted, the way I had taken control of my place in the team. They had all seen it. I wasn't a fluke. I wasn't an anomaly. I was part of the fabric of this unit, and I had earned my place through hard work, dedication, and skill. The mission had been a success, but it wasn't the victory that mattered most. It was the legacy it created. The realization that I wasn't just a woman in a man's world. I was a sniper, and I was as good, if not better, than any of them. The message had been sent loud and clear. That night, as I lay in my bunk, I reflected on how far I had come. From the days when I had been treated like an outsider to this moment, where I was finally seen for who I truly was. A sniper, a professional, someone who could be relied on in the most high-pressure situations. But even as I thought about that journey, I knew that it wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about my skill or my success. It was about what I had done for the others around me, the message I had sent to those who thought I couldn't succeed. It was about proving that no one should ever be dismissed or underestimated, not based on their gender, not based on their past, but only based on their potential. In the weeks that followed, things changed on the team. The men who had once silently resisted me now came to me for advice. They sought my opinion, and they respected my insight into our operations. It wasn't just because of my skills as a sniper, but because they knew I had something they couldn't easily replicate, a mind that saw the bigger picture. I wasn't just thinking about the next shot. I was thinking about the operation as a whole, about how everything fit together. Sterling, ever the tactical leader, had begun to rely on me more. He had seen how I worked under pressure, how I could read the terrain, how I understood the variables in a mission better than most of the seasoned snipers he had worked with. I wasn't just another part of the team. I was an asset. I had earned my place by proving that I could lead as much as I could follow. And while that was more than enough for me, I could feel the respect building, quietly but surely. One afternoon, Sterling pulled me aside after a debriefing. "Miranda," he began, his usual gruff demeanor softening just slightly. "I've been thinking. The mission went well, but I want you to consider something." I raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. "We've got a special operation coming up, one that'll require more than just sharp shooting. It'll take someone who knows how to think on their feet, adapt in the moment. I want you to lead the sniper team for this one." I was taken aback. Lead? Me? For a mission? I had never even considered that it would come to this. I had worked alongside these men, but leading them was something different. It wasn't about just hitting targets anymore. It was about strategy, about making decisions that would affect the entire outcome of the mission. "I'll do it," I said without hesitation. I didn't have to think about it. I had earned this. I had proven that I belonged. The operation was more complex than any we had faced before. It was a mission to take out a high-ranking target in an enemy compound. There would be no room for error. It was going to require not just the best snipers, but the best strategist, the best planner. And in that moment, I knew that I was ready. I had the experience, the intelligence, and the calm under pressure to lead the team. The days leading up to the mission were filled with preparation. I spent countless hours going over the terrain maps, studying the enemy defenses, calculating every possible scenario. Every move had to be perfect. Every decision had to be the right one. When the mission finally began, I stood with my team at the edge of the compound, watching as the sun set behind us. It was a quiet moment, but the tension in the air was palpable. This was it. This was the culmination of everything I had worked for. We moved in under the cover of darkness, positioning ourselves with precision. I could feel the weight of the mission, but it wasn't fear I felt. It was focus. Every shot was calculated, every move deliberate. When the target appeared in my scope, I didn't hesitate. I took the shot and the target dropped without a sound. Mission success. We had neutralized the target without alerting the enemy, without complications. It was the cleanest operation any of us had been part of. As we made our way back to base, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led up to this point. From that first moment when I stood on the shooting range and outshot every man, in the room, to the mission I had just led, I had built a legacy. A legacy not based on being the best sniper, but on being the one who could think, the one who could adapt, the one who could lead. And as we debriefed, I knew that my journey was far from over. But I also knew that I had proven everything I needed, too. I had earned my place, not through anyone's approval, but through my skill, my determination, and my will to succeed. The sniper team wasn't just a team anymore. It was my team. And as we all stood there acknowledging the success of the mission, I realized that the true victory wasn't in the target hit or in the mission completed. It was in the respect, the recognition, and the quiet power that I had earned. And that, more than anything, was the legacy I would leave behind.